It's okay, it takes time. I know everything will be alright.
Welcome, everybody. This is a live interview. We are going to be talking to Dr. Daniela and to Ali. And before we do that, I want to properly introduce them. But putting today's topic into context, October 10th is the International Mental Health Awareness Day. And in doing that, it's so important to understand not just why we're all gathering here this evening, but really what this day is about and the relevance that it has for what I believe the evolvement of human nature. If we think about that term, mental health, a lot of us will have an idea of what we think it means. And unless we've been directly affected by it, we might even have an opinion. I know Ali will talk a little bit about the stigma that is attached to mental health. And I know that Dr. Daniela will be able to talk to us about the psychological theories of why we will be experiencing mental health. One thing remains sure is that we are all affected either directly or indirectly at different times in our lives. I'm one of those people that never really understood what mental health was. And being a coach, especially in working with the youth, I always knew that there were moments where they might need my support a little bit more. On my own life journey, I always realized that there were days that felt a little bit harder, but I never really understood the relevance and the deep importance of mental health until the 10th of October, 2019, when my daughter passed away because she decided to take her life due to a mental health condition that we only really understood when it was too late. So tonight I am here not just because I really enjoy meeting amazing speakers and doing interviews like this, but I'm here because it's very personal. The individual that I lost a year ago was not just a young, thriving human being. She was also somebody that people would describe as strong. She was a human being that people would describe as deeply caring, considerate, academic. She believed in the voices of the minority. She would be the person standing up at every fair that would be supporting her peers, her family, and the community. But yet we lost her because of mental health. So tonight we gather together with Ali Salama, who will talk about his personal journey and how his personal journey became his career journey. And we will also be talking with Dr. Daniela, because I think it's important that we remember people like me are not counselors, we're not psychologists, and we don't pretend to be. We're here tonight because whoever you are, wherever you are, and however old you are, you will be affected by mental health at some point, either directly with yourself or indirectly by knowing someone or hearing about someone. So, Dr. Daniela, I would like to formally introduce you. Dr. Daniela, you come to us with so much learning and wisdom, but also you come to us with, I think, one of the most relevant points for a young person in being born in Colombia and raised in a different country in the United States of America. You would have experienced that culture change. Dr. Daniela has worked in school settings as a school counselor and a special needs specialist. She's also worked in private practice settings for several years, experienced in a wide range of psychological issues. However, Dr. Daniela has a particular interest in working with couples, children, and mood disorders. Welcome, Dr. Daniela. It's so great to have you here with us this evening. Alongside Dr. Daniela, we have Ali Salama. Not only is Ali Salama an incredibly inspiring young man, he is also a social entrepreneur, a speaker, a podcaster, an ex-pro athlete, and the Middle East's first mental health ambassador. He's the founder of Empower, the first mental health magazine in the Middle East. He's in the winning Harvard's top 7 most impactful social initiatives in 2019, and he's earning recognition from the World Health Organization. And not only is he all these wonderful things, he's also someone who went through times of darkness, and he's going to be able to share those with you this evening. I'm so humbled to be here with you, and I'm so honored to be sharing this platform with both of you tonight. Thank you for joining us. So let's begin with sharing why you're here. I know why we wanted you to be here, but what made you make the time for us this evening? Dr. Daniela, what is your intention for our audience and really for our community by creating more of an awareness around mental health?
Yeah, so thank you all for having me this evening. I think it's a pleasure, to be sharing my experience as a psychologist, but also, you know, trying to help destigmatize mental health. Mental health is seems to be a dirty word nowadays, where when we think mental, as first things that pop into our mind might be crazy, broken, dangerous. These are words that are very much related to the word mental. But the truth is that we all have mental health, and mental health is a continuum where some days we might wake up with a poor mental health, and some days we might wake up with a stronger mental health. It's very similar to physical health, right? We all have it. Some days we wake up with a headache, some days we wake up with less energy, and some days we feel like we're stronger than ever, fitter than ever. So I want us to first understand that mental health is something we all have. And it works as a continuum. So my aim to coming today to this panel is to help understand what is mental health, how it affects everyone of every gender, of every religion, of every age possible, and how we can identify when someone is struggling with a mental health illness. So, thank you again for having me this evening.
Those are such great intentions. And definitely, I liked how you described mental health. And I know that when we talk to the youth, I know that just today, when I was speaking to a group of our eldest students, I talked about mental health also as just like working those muscles. And we talk about our physical health, and we are so proud to work on our physical health. And I want for young people to really look at their mental health the way that they would look at that physical health. So it's so great to hear you saying those things, and such great intentions for everybody, regardless of gender, regardless of culture, religion, or age. I think it's one of those things that we all need to be understanding more of. Thank you so much. Ali, what brings you here to us? I know why I wanted you here. I know why the Rotary Club and the Rotaracts want you here. I know that young people from the college are so proud to have you here, but why did you make the time and wake up at ridiculous o'clock so that you can be with us here today?
Yeah, I just want to say, Daniela, Dr. Daniela, that was great. I think that, many we might think that many people know these things, the mental health is something that it's very refreshing to hear this one once again. And Maria, I just want to say thank you for bringing me in, for the Rotary Club for bringing me in. Um, why am I here today? I think that, or what really brings me here today. It's very simple. I think that we have we are the generation that is pushing for change, and unfortunately, mental health is only declining, especially with COVID, and life is not easy, and that's something that we have to face with things being online, and many challenges coming across. And I think it's my duty as someone who actively chose to speak out, because number one, I'm a man and I'm a male, and that's something we don't do typically in the Arab world. So that's a big part of why I'm compelled to be here. And number two, is because, like, I never thought I'd be doing this growing up. I was a professional athlete. I actually swam for Al Nasser club, and in Dubai, because I went to desk, and it's something that makes things a little bit refreshing. And I feel like if I could bring a message, or help anyone watching, especially the younger folks out here, understand that it's okay to stumble, and that isn't the end of the road, you know.
Thank you, Ali. Ali, can you talk to us a little bit about your personal journey and when you started to notice that something felt not so right?
Yeah, that's 100% sort of for sure. I so I left Dubai in 2014 to come to study in Toronto in Canada, and I was the type of guy who was, you know, the swimming captain, the water polo captain, the starting lineup for the football team, you know, and I was that type of guy, the alpha male, and I'm Egyptian too. We have very sharp blood. We were very passionate, and you know what? I and all that, of course, aside, I was training like 7 times a week at Al Nasser. So when I moved here, I thought I was very strong. You know, I was capable of overcoming any challenge. What is, you know, immigrating, and I'd have a life that I was completely able to conquer. That wasn't really what quite happened. I think that uh, you know, contrary to what someone in my position, someone who saw me on the outside, it was so difficult. I remember coming here and just being so lost, being feeling so small in a world so big. And I remember I was walking down the streets and truly asking myself, you know, could I do it and could I make it? And you know, for a year I was training around twice a week at the gym because that's where I felt, you know, you'd automatically go to the place where you feel you're safe or you're home. That was my safety net. And then I just couldn't keep it up because it was a time ticking bomb. And that was when, you know, the symptoms, of course they don't develop in one day, they take months. But you know, you reach to a point where where no matter how strong you are, you say, wow, I can't take it. And I reached to the point where I couldn't get out of bed, I couldn't shower, I couldn't brush my teeth. I was so lost with where, you know, what time of day are we at. I would go into class uh, and not just feel depleted, but in terms of energy. But people, I used to sit at the front because I have hearing disability, and so the people sitting at the front would be the very focused people. They'd look at me and they'd see my eyes like red, dead shot red, and they'd be like, seriously, you know. And I'd be like, what's up, like what's wrong? And that's when I realized that this was just becoming an issue that if I just left, it would have only hurt me more.
Thank you, Ali. Dr. Daniela, in hearing Ali describe what he experienced, what is that like for you to be listening? Because this is definitely something you would have heard before by patients. How do you respond to this? How do you help somebody who is a young professional or an adolescent who is coming to you and expressing, I can't get out of bed. No matter what I'm doing, nothing seems to work.
So first of all, Ali, thank you so much for sharing, your testimony. I think it's extremely brave for you to be with us today and sharing such a personal story that took you to this new Ali that that feels empowered, that feels so passionate about mental health, because at the end, it's something that you hold very dear to your heart and something that you have experienced firsthand. And I think these are the type of advocates that we need in mental health. Someone that has recovered from a mental health illness, someone that has really understood what the cost of a mental health illness is, and is in that recovery stage where you understand what it comes from, when you get the help and you are on the other side. So I personally feel very humbled that you have shared this story, because 1 out of 4 people are currently struggling with a mental health illness. So I said we all have mental health, but a mental health illness is something that develops, like you said, over time. And I want us to consider the 3 following things when we are considering a mental health illness. The first one is, how is it disrupting your functionality? So Ali mentioned, I wasn't able to get out of bed. I wasn't able to focus in my school. I wasn't able to sleep. I was not able to be my usual type A self that he was describing, right? So there is an effect in his functionality. It interrupts his life. The second thing is it needs to persist over time. So depending on the psychological disorder or mental health illness that a client might be presenting, it needs a certain period of time. The duration of it is going to be really important. And lastly is, how is it changing my thoughts? How is it changing the health of my feelings and the health of my behaviors? These are three important considerations when we are defining what a mental health illness looks like. Now, another thing that Ali mentioned, which is quite typical in someone that is struggling with a mental health illness, is we imagine depression or anxiety to be, I don't know if you are all familiar with Winnie the Pooh, the Eeyore, the really sad donkey that has a low tone of voice, and the maybe the gray cloud on top of his character's face, or someone that hides between, hides in their room and doesn't come out. We usually associate depression to these sort of images, but the truth is that mental health doesn't look like that at all. We have Princess Diana, we have Elon Musk, we have Dwayne Johnson, we have Kate Spade, we have Martin Luther King. We have all of these iconic figures now that have come out and that we know have struggled with mental health illness, because the truth is that it is something so uh, personal, so interior, it's so interiorized that we are now forced to put a mask on, right? So at the beginning, Ali was saying, no one thought that I was going to be this person that was not focused in the first row of, his university. I was supposed to be the one that was training 7 days a week, that was on top, captain of his swimming team, whatever. All of these, stereotypes of what a happy person, successful person would look like. So now that we know that mental health doesn't necessarily look like the donkey in Winnie the Pooh, we can assume that a lot of people that we know that we interact with are actually struggling at the moment with a mental health illness. And so coming right now and sharing this story, Ali, I can't stress it enough. I feel that that's an extremely, important thing that you're doing, because our mind and our bodies are connected and they're constantly communicating, right? So your lack of energy, your, inconsistent sleeping patterns, all of those things were communicating that your mental health was not where in that continuum where it should be. And it just sometimes we don't understand what it looks like, right? So we are saying, well, what do you mean? He's in class, he's just tired, he just has bloodshot eyes, but whatever, he's here, he's just having a rough week. But when these weeks turn into months, or when these months turn into years even, and we just cover it up because showing that we're struggling with something might make us look weak or inappropriate or broken, because again, the word mental health is so dirty. I like to say the word dirty because that's how I feel it is. It becomes quite difficult to be as open.
That's really interesting that you mentioned all of these things. Ali, you went from experiencing what Dr. Daniela just described to us, and how you explained, on the outside, you were doing everything to try and fix what was going on that made you feel something wasn't right. You went from that to who you are today, becoming an ambassador. Now, from the perspective of anyone on this side of the screen, I think the stigma of mental health is, like you described, Daniela, maybe dirty and weak. And I know that as a mom who lost a daughter to mental health, I remember her telling me, "Mom, I have I can't hand in an assignment because of my mental health." And I'm embarrassed to say, but as parents, we'd be like, "Oh, she's talking, there's that excuse." And then we hear ambassador of mental health, and I almost imagine it's like your life must be perfect now, so you no longer have an issue. You must be picture perfect poster child. How does that resonate with you, Ali, when people now hear that you're an ambassador, and yet you might still be struggling with those same issues that you had before, but you've gained strategies that Dr. Daniela will also be describing in the next few minutes?
Yeah, I think that it's because of the fact that sometimes, it doesn't always go away and it comes back. that's why I do what I do. Sometimes, it takes years to sometimes fully go away. I don't think, when you learn how important sort of mental health is, I don't think, and speaking of personal experience now that it's been maybe 4 years, I haven't truly overcome it. I think that I'm at a place where I feel comfortable, but some people say it never goes away, some people say it goes away, but what I can truly say that from my experience is that you learn to navigate it, and it becomes a point of strength, and that awareness you develop from your emotional intelligence, that's why I am who I am today. And I think it's learning how to set boundaries, it's learning how to walk after you've been paralyzed again. You may never think that you're gonna walk like before, but maybe you have another skill set, you skip differently, and that's your skill, right? And I think that to think that you always want to come back to who you were before, that really hurt me a lot, and I think that I let that go and I've become who I am today, if that makes sense.
And who are you today, Ali?
I think I'd say that I'm a very resilient and a very emotionally intelligent person at the moment.
And I love that you said that. Can you say that and look in people's eyes and say that? Because I think that sometimes mental health, we're almost afraid to be confident and say, hey, this is me.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes not being able to look into somebody's eyes is almost a way of identifying that I'm not ready yet. And I think this is really important that we have candid conversations like this. And it's not putting anyone in the spotlight. It's standing up like I did on a stage in front of students that look to me and think, you must have it all put together. And I'm sure, Dr. Daniela, sometimes you might feel that your clients, your patients would think that your life is perfect. And Ali as well, as the ambassador for mental health. It's almost like we have now put ourselves on platforms of what we're supposed to be as like perfect and strong and no vulnerabilities. But how does confidence play into it? And Ali, from your role as an ambassador now, how do you help people that follow you, people that listen to you? What strategies does your wisdom and your tools do to help people?
Yeah, I think this is a very sort of important question because I'd say I'm very active on social media, and I do my best to always um, you know showcase. I think what success means to me is when I see somebody in real life that they've never seen, that I've never seen before, and meet me and say, hey, like, you are exactly the same, because this is a testament to really showcasing the authentic, vulnerable, genuine Ali. I've gotten that many times, and this is why I actively also take rest and breaks from social media, because it is very energy consuming. That is one strategy that I personally, use for my confidence as well. My podcast is also, something that I aim and aspire to share with young leaders to showcase that, that picture perfect image isn't really quite picture perfect, and it's called empathy always wins for a reason. To showcase that empathetic leadership is the only way that you can win, whether it's in life or in business, because in an era that, or in a time where we really need to connect with one another, more than ever before, it's that's why I really mentioned emotional intelligence was one of the skill sets that I truly believe I continue to master it and get better at day by day, because I think that as someone who needs to speak up, and as someone who always thinks about ways to communicate to people who maybe accept mental health, people who don't accept mental health, I have to be very smart with my language and knowing how to win uh, in that conversation, because that conversation needs to win to be able to get the funding, to be able to get the attention, to be able to get the care, the love, and the support from maybe parents that may have never acknowledged that their kid may need a little bit of extra support here and there, or from other stakeholders, or from people that may think that may simply have been the old me that don't really believe that it exists, because there are a lot of people that are in that phase. So I think those are ways that I use for my confidence, but I still keep saying that we just have to be very genuine with ourselves. And if there's one way that I sort of would say it's I have a journal right here, and as I'm in this panel, I like to write and I like to share my thoughts, even to myself, by myself, and it's a way of clearing my mind out, and that helps me become the person that is expressive, and that helps me thrive and feel comfortable in my own skin and in my own thoughts and feelings.
That's so interesting that you take us there, because my next question for Dr. Daniela is, I know that it's really important to you in the work that you do, that you help your patients live a rich, full, and meaningful life. And you talk about psychological tools such as mindfulness, acceptance, and diffusion. How do you help your clients? And there are young professionals on the call right now, and listening to the age groups that were described for the different business networking, my heart really goes out to the Rotaract group, because they're in that age bracket that they're striving to achieve their career potential. And at the same time, they're trying to find their identity through culture change and country change and so much. How do you help young professionals gain mindfulness, and how do you help them to accept that the health of their mindset really needs focus?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is, um, I want to go back to what Ali mentioned earlier. And he said, I'm still in this progress. I'm still learning about myself. I'm still trying to, recognize when I'm not well, and use my coping strategies like journaling or social media detox, that he mentioned some of these things that he does to help cope whenever he's down. And one of the first things that I really emphasize when I have a young person or whoever in my practice is for them to learn what mental health is. What are some of the risk factors in developing a mental health disorder? We're talking about biological factors, we're talking about psychological factors, we're talking about social factors. And as most of us expats in Dubai, that's actually one of the most important social factors that play a role in developing a mental health disorder, because we're this is no man's land, right? So our social support system keeps on evolving, changing. So for someone that's a millennial that wants to, hit the goal, hit the ground and running, achieve all of these different goals in life, and not having a steady support system, that's a risk factor that we need to actually pay attention to, right? The other area of risk factors, like I said, was psychological factors. So do I have the emotional intelligence that Ali mentioned that he understood in therapy? Do I have the ability? And what I mean by emotional intelligence, and maybe this is something that we want to define for those that don't understand what it means. I always like to I always like talking about it in the same terms as resilience. If you have high emotional intelligence, you are going to be a more resilient person. Resilient is the ability to jump back from uncomfortable feelings, from difficult emotions, from difficult situations, and learn from them. So, how do we learn from these difficult situations and emotions? We are going to go inside our inner world, where we are able to recognize how we feel, we're able to recognize how we think, and we're able to then recognize how these two things are affecting our behavior. And in the same way we're doing that with ourselves, we're able to also recognize that in the other people that we are surrounded by. And that's a big ask. That's not something that comes very easy. It takes a lot of practice. And unfortunately, in schools, we don't learn this. Which brings me to the other risk factor that I also talk about with my clients, which are the biological risk factors. If we come from families that have a history of mental health illness that might be diagnosed or not diagnosed, that brings a different risk into the table. So the first thing that I always like doing is, who are you? What are some of the important risk factors that we need to put in the table to assess and understand what are some of the tools that then I need to teach you to cope with these different risk factors that are always going to be there, because we can't change where we're from, we can't change where we are, we can't change the tools that we have or not have. So this is where the starting ground comes from. And then you have different modalities of therapy that you can grab onto, where depending on the modality, for example, and we have the most common one called cognitive behavioral therapy, or short for CBT. It's one of the most prominent evidence-based therapies that are used for depression, anxiety, eating disorders, whatever the diagnosis might be, where the aim is to teach the client how to understand what are some of the most common thinking mistakes that that person's making, and how to challenge these negative thoughts, right? So that's one way. Then we have another approach, which is the one I usually use in my therapy, called acceptance and commitment therapy, or short for ACT, where I teach how to distance yourself from these negative thoughts through skills such as mindfulness or diffusion, where you are not your thoughts. Your thoughts do not define you. Your thoughts don't need to be telling you what to do. They're thoughts that come and go. And we are the ones that are giving those thoughts importance. So it's, how can we relate to our thoughts in a healthier way where there is more distance, and at the end we are in control of our behavior. So it's bringing that power back to you, whichever approach you decide to take in therapy. The aim of therapy is to bring that power back to the person that's struggling and make them feel more empowered. When you mention, how do I get my clients to feel like they're living a meaningful and valuable life, one of the components of ACT therapy is working on values. And we confuse values with goals. So when I ask a millennial, which I think is most of us, I think I'm still in the millennial cohort. We're like, I want to be a millionaire, I want to make this much money, I want to graduate this, and I want to be known as this, and I want to be the head of whatever. And these are goals, 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 goals. But there's a big problem with goals, because when our goals don't have meaning or purpose, or the right meaning or purpose, and we don't achieve those goals, we are associating our self-esteem and our self-worth with the fact that we are not getting towards closer to these goals. So when we talk about values, we're not talking about a place that we want to get to. We were talking about something that defines us on a daily basis. So for example, being loving, you never get to loving. You act loving every day, which then might get you to achieve your goals. But there is just a different approach where there is more meaning, more value, more purpose, which then makes everything worth it at the end of the day when you come to therapy.
Ali, I can see you nodding as Dr. Daniela is saying these things. How is this resonating with you? What is she saying that you're thinking, yeah, that makes so much sense?
Yeah, for sure. It's everything that, someone who is a very goal-driven person needs to hear. I have very big goals and very big ambitions and very big dreams, and I encourage everyone to dreaming. If you still have active dreams, there's a sign that you feel hopeful. No one isn't. You can't find someone who's unhopeful yet has big dreams. So there's a correlation between loving life, but with what Dr. Daniela is saying about making sure that you are present and you are living according to your values. It's I almost think that when I was going through therapy, I pictured myself having achieved my dreams for sort of 20 years into my life. Now, I think that with what Dr. Daniela is saying, that achieving your dreams with your values is the ultimate fulfillment, because so many people we've read over and over again have gotten a very bright cake that we see and we admire only to read that they have felt very empty reaching there. And while we're chasing our lives every day, trying to better ourselves, the last thing I really want to ever feel, or want anyone here to feel, is getting something they truly desired every single day, only to feel that it wasn't worth it, because that's a black hole by itself. So I think with what Dr. Daniela was talking about wasn't wasn't don't dream or don't have any goals. It's aspire to dream big, aspire to have meaningful goals, but make sure that your goals are in alignment with who you are, because that is ultimate fulfillment. And that's why I was nodding, because I had a big problem with some therapists that I went to, and I wasn't syncing with them because I didn't understand them. And it's very important to realize that even when you seek professional help, not everyone will be the right fit, because not everyone will communicate the way that you need to be communicated to as a human being. And it's something that I also wanted to share. And that's why I was nodding when Dr. Daniela was saying that, because it's something that not a lot of people communicate in that manner.
I'm going to play devil's advocate, if that's okay with both of you.
Please.
And I think sometimes when we have these conversations, it's almost like a fairy tale, and then the story ends and everybody goes home happily ever after. I'm living evidence that that's not the case all the time. And in listening to some of the practices that are discussed when we think about mental health, and I don't even want to call it that, because I think it's called life. And I think that in life we have our ups, we have our downs. And in listening to some of the names that you called out, those successful people that we know about in the world, we look at role models like Lady Diana, like Elon Musk, and we look at them and they're successful, and they're everything that we see as success, and we almost allow them to have a vulnerability, and it's okay, and we put them on a pedestal. And then we have our everyday person who is struggling with the same life conditions that person we put on a pedestal has been put on. And yet somehow we feel pity, and we feel that, oh, I'm so sorry for them, and there's all these apologies. How do we merge that gap? And why do we allow certain role models to take the platform and be the voice for an issue that is, an issue that most people are having? So as we're having this conversation right now, I know there's somebody listening. I know there's somebody struggling with employment, or struggling with identity and understanding, either through the pandemic, or maybe it was something before the pandemic that right now just feels even greater. And they're listening to this and thinking, I do the journaling, I am self-reflecting, I have hired a coach, I know what my values are, I cannot connect the dots. How do we help them?
So I would say, first of all, we are in this culture where we don't have permission to feel. We are trying to push everything underneath the carpet to just keep going and achieving these goals that are not tied to any sort of value. Because achieving goals and being productive, and I want to go on talking a little bit about productivity, is the equivalent of being successful. So when I talk to people about productivity, and I get the consultant in my room, or the high achiever, or the perfectionist, or the type A, it's all about ticking the checkbox, right? I did this, I did this, I did this, but there is no mindfulness in these things that you're checking out. You're not really enjoying every activity. You're just doing it for the sake of being productive, because at the end, productivity, like I said, is very linked to your self-esteem, your recognition, your status, your success, your income, all of this. And so our emotions are not there. And we have very limited feeling vocabulary or feeling literacy. If we ask people how they feel, they're going to give me 5 emotions max: good, bad, scared, happy, But there is, and I will encourage you all to please, after this meeting, look up the feeling wheel. We have so many feelings that we need to almost recognize in ourselves. So, yes, the mindfulness is important. Yes, the journaling is important. Yes, going to a coach and understanding your values is important. But most of all, when we're talking about emotional intelligence, we're also talking about diving in to these feelings, understanding where they come from, understanding how they feel in your body, understanding that any emotion, whether it's anxiety, sadness, frustration, happiness, excitement, it is a way of communicating with you that something is not right or something is right. And therefore, our emotions are an extremely important communicator of what is going on in your inside world. So we're not focusing on that, and we're not letting ourselves permission to feel. And we're just doing the journaling or the mindfulness or the coaching or the value work without any sort of conscious effort and understanding of that some feelings might come up through this process. We're not doing the job. And there's a book that I would highly recommend all of you to read. It's called Permission to Feel, and it teaches you how to do that. Because it's not easy to go into a curious stance and saying, where do I feel this in my body? What is this feeling of frustration telling me right now? Because feeling frustrated is not the same thing as feeling upset or feeling angry or feeling revengeful. They're different. They feel different. And so this is why I feel that that's where, yes, we can do all the therapy in the world and we can go and do all the workbooks of self-help that you can think of. But if you are not necessarily in the mindset of allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and Brené Brown talks a lot about vulnerability, please, if you can, look at all her TED Talks, read her books. She's an amazing author and that talks a lot about empathy, like Ali's saying. We can talk about that later, but this is such an important part of coming to therapy, allowing yourself to be vulnerable and allowing yourself to feel.
That is so great. And hearing you describing this, I can almost see, like a workout in a gym with a personal trainer. What you're describing is that workout that we do with ourselves every day, and understanding that it's a journey, like you said. And I think, Ali, you described what you do as that journey as well. And in understanding that the destination is not defined, we don't get to the destination. Ali, you talked about, some people say that it will never go away, and some people say that it might go away. And I think it's in when we put these unrealistic expectations on ourselves, and young professionals, millennials listening to this, it's so important to remember that when we put these unrealistic expectations of what our success should look like, either, and I'm sure, Dr. Daniela, you've seen with your patients, a certain age I should have achieved something. Ali, you went to uni, being a young person, leaving your family and going and moving abroad. Your parents would have been describing pride in their son going off to university. That, in putting these expectations of what we should do or when we should achieve them, I think doesn't help our health of our mental health. Now, I know that we have questions coming in, and before we bring it to a close, I want to get close and personal. And I think it's so important. Ali, you touched on working with therapists in your time, and some of them, you couldn't align with, and no matter, what they would tell you, you could not align. And it is about finding that intricate relationship with that individual. And I know that when I was visiting my daughter's psychologist, there were moments that I couldn't even be in the room because I was listening to her talk, and I thought, how was this the person? But then in reflecting, as you said, Dr. Daniela, and finding empathy, I understood that, we do what we can, and we try and take our clients, our patients, our students, whoever we're with, on that journey as well. Dr. Daniela, how do you build a relationship with either a youth, a young professional, the parents, the teachers? How do you build a relationship so that they see you as them and not as this perfect individual who is preaching?
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point. And one of the things that I feel very passionate about actually is never allowing myself to have a figure of authority in the room, because this is where you are a team. If someone comes to see you as a therapist, you need to be in charge of actually getting into that person's world and understanding where they are without judgment. Now, it's hard not to have judgment. We all have judgments because judgments make the world function better. We put people in stereotypes. We have categories for a reason so we can think less and be more practical. That's just how the human brain works. But when you're a therapist, you're choosing to be non-judgmental. You're choosing to see that person as human and as vulnerable as you are. And when we think about empathy, which maybe I can talk about it here, you're connecting with a place where you have felt similarly to how your client is feeling. We've all felt sad, we've all felt betrayed, we've all felt discouraged, we've all felt anxious. So it's that ability to connect with something in your personal life, even as a therapist, where you can say, you know what, I hear you. I I'm interested in understanding what has that been like for you. You're not coming from a place of problem solving mode. You know, a lot of times when someone shares that they're struggling, your initial reaction for everyone, including a therapist, is problem solving. You need to do this, you need to do that. Have you tried this? You're not doing the right things. And this brings you to have a role of authority that is not welcomed in that moment because that person's vulnerable. That person just needs to be listened to and be understood and be respected. And their feelings are their feelings that cannot be judged. So instead, it's the way that you connect with the client where you're saying, I hear you. I can see that this has been hard for you. What has been like? Tell me a little bit about this feeling. You know, how long have you been having this? Um, who else have you been feeling comfortable in sharing your feelings to? So you know who that person's support group is. You know who that person feels comfortable talking to. And then you ask why. Why have you felt comfortable talking to X and Y and Z? And then as a therapist, you adapt to that. Because people come with different expectations of what therapy is like, right? And sometimes you get defiant clients and, you know, you don't tell me what to do. What is this, 30 something year old doctor telling a 57-year-old man, how to parent my kids? Do you have kids? What do this is sort of the initial responses that you might get.
So Ali, as we're waiting for Daniela, Dr. Daniela to come back in, how do you feel being here tonight, young professionals listening to you, students from the college that you went to, hearing what you're saying, and knowing that you are making a difference in somebody's life right now, which is why you are doing the work that you are doing?
I think it's never easy coming up and being vulnerable. I know we've spoken offline, me and you, Maria, and it's just not easy. I think that it's I just want to add, if I could add anything to what Dr. Daniela is saying, is a big part of being highly empathetic is, and they teach us that when I've been to a training program here for youth, mental health speakers and leaders, when we go to schools around Canada and give our mental health sort of talks, and it's called the 5 golden rules. It's how to be there for someone you care about. Say what you see, show you care, hear them out, know your role, and connect them to help. So it's very important to say what you see. If you're concerned, say you're concerned. Say, hey, you don't look as great as you do every day. And then, show you care. Your body language is very important. And then hear them out. it's so important to be non-judgmental, is what Dr. Daniela was saying. That just being there in that manner, and then knowing your role. If I'm not a professional, know your role. If you can take up to a certain level of, because sometimes someone talking about their trauma, if you are also not at your best, you kind of have to understand when to say, hey, you know what, I know who would be amazing for you to connect with, that can help you better than I can in this given moment. It's not avoiding them, but it's knowing when you need to play your role and connecting them to the right people. That just skill set right there can help you save someone's life when they're about to take their own life. And this skill set is a skill set that's highly important in our age, in young adolescents or teenagers, where sometimes emotions can be so heightened, and the anxiety around the future, what am I going to be, where's my life going. We see a lot of mental health disorders developing in adolescence. So just being the friend that you perhaps may not have had, or that you may wish for, that is sometimes, in complementary to what Dr. Daniela was saying, sometimes really the best thing that you can do.
You mentioned something that I find to be extremely important is understanding, what mental health illnesses look like. How can I be empathetic to that person that's struggling? And how can I guide that person to the right set of people, professionals that can help? Adolescents don't come to parents or counselors or teachers. They don't feel safe. They feel, worried that they're going to be judged. So having another peer to be certified in this is going to be crucial to prevent things to get worse. And it's all about early detection and early intervention. Worldwide, we've seen that mental health is a very costly thing for governments. Having mental health facilities, psychologists, psychiatrists, these are very costly services. So it's about early intervention, early detection. We know that most of the mental health illnesses start around the age of 13 to 14 years of age. So if we can impact that population from the beginning, imagine all of the things that we could prevent later on in their early adulthood.
And I think that's really, really, really great to hear, as we do have youth on the call. I don't want to forget the millennials. So we're here, we've got young professionals. They didn't have the education, they didn't have the mental health training. What tips can you offer anyone listening to this right now and watching this that can self-identify, I need to gain some of these strategies and some of these skills, but also in understanding that they work for a line manager that might not really have the emotional intelligence that we want them to have? What are some of the coping strategies we can offer them?
So the first thing is I would always recommend having every 6 months, if you can, or once a year, just like you go for a GP checkup. I would recommend for everyone to go for a mental health checkup. Okay, so it's a 30-minute conversation with a professional where you check in and you see how your well-being is doing. I think that in itself is the first line of action. So you have someone that is understanding how your well-being is in that context in that given time, because it's a continuum and it changes and it fluctuates. We want to make sure that we're having these routine checkups with someone that's in the field. The second thing is, there's 7 habits that we need to almost be very, very mindful of for our well-being, and they're easy habits. So the first one is our sleep. Okay, we very, very commonly underestimate sleep. There's another book, guys. Today I'm going to be recommending so many books, but it's called Why We Sleep. And it's another great book where you are going to learn all the benefits of sleep. I can go on for hours talking about sleep, where it is very tied to your immunity, your well-being, your memory, your learning. There's so many benefits of sleep. So watch how many hours you sleep. Buy yourself a Fitbit, track your sleep. We need at least 7 hours a day. And most people don't value sleep. The second thing is physical activity, not for vanity purposes, but for mental health purposes. Again, a lot of benefits from your practicing physical activity on a daily basis. Third thing that we need to also be mindful of is, who is your support system? Do we have a safe support system that we can rely on? Am I connecting with the right people? Am I eliminating toxic people from my WhatsApp, my social media? Am I boundaried socially? Then we have playtime. We underestimate play, laughter. We rarely connect with our inner child. We are so serious in our world, and we're always so diligent in working and family life and work stress. And when do we have time to laugh? Laughter is a perfect antidote for depression, for example, using the use of humor. And then we have downtime or time in. There are two separate ones. Downtime is where you are just doing nothing. And again, this is so hard for people that are type A like myself. Doing nothing is the equivalent in our eyes as I'm useless, I'm not productive, I'm not doing anything. But not doing anything has a really, really important value. And time in is yoga, reading, breathing exercises. These are things that, you know, really benefit your well-being. And this might seem like a lot. Maybe some of you are listening to me and then you might say, Daniela, I don't have time for any of that. But it is about creating a system in your daily life that makes you feel like these things can get done. They don't have to be 30 minutes. It can be 5 minutes, 2 minutes, where you are engaging in these activities. And it's thinking, what is the smallest step possible that I can take today? It's not about big goals. It's about breaking these things into the smallest step possible that you can do towards your well-being and your mental health.
Thank you. That's such a great, I love that list. And like we work on our bodies, we do our hair, like you said, you go for a regular checkup. You want to be doing some of these things to keep yourself going and feel like there's something that you can do. And it's a little habit every day, isn't it? Would you say, Dr. Daniela? It's every day something small that we keep doing to build ourselves into that resilience. Ali, any last thoughts that you want to be sharing with everyone?
Um, I seriously, connected with the safe support system you said, Dr. Danielle. I think that, during the hardest period of my life, the darkest period of my life, I remember there's only one friend that would Skype me every day, and he was a semi-pro boxer in the UK, one of my close friends from desk as well, from Dubai, from my school in Dubai. And I think that made the difference. I think that was more effective than many of the sessions that I had professionally. And I think, especially for men, for all the people that are listening, and identify as male on the call, it's so hard to be vulnerable with your male peers. Most talks are shallow. They're competitive, and we like that. But if you ask yourself, who's someone that I could feel safe with if anything happens? Who's going to really show up for me? I think this is a really, really important point when you're reflecting on who to keep in your life and who to get closer to and who to invest time with. Because sometimes, life isn't always going to be up, up, up. So you have to be ready for that, mitigating that downside or that risk that you have when you stumble upon something. And if anything, I want to leave our audience with today is always be prepared in advance, because once you have that, you will feel safe, and you won't feel like you are a burden to somebody, because you will actively be that person for them. And it's a relationship whereby it works hand in hand. So I think, knowing who they are, your most important three or four or two, is just so important to prioritize and set boundaries with every other people that are outside or inside this circle, because this is the circle that truly is sometimes going to really enhance your sense of well-being when you need them the most, especially in our Arab culture that sometimes does not allow for you to be as open. And to change that, you have to sort of build it from a seed, or build it from a, or nourish it in your own semi community or micro community.
Thank you so much, Ali. We could talk forever. This is a topic that's very close to my heart. I know it's very close to both of you as well. Dr. Daniela, how can we find you if we want to reach out?
So you can find me at the Lighthouse Arabia. That's where I work. You can go to our website and you can definitely write me an email. I'll write my email in the chat box so you can ask me questions.
Thank you, Dr. Daniela. Ali, how can we find you?
On Instagram for sure, or Empathy Always Wins on my podcast. You can find me pretty much on social media. I'm very active, and a direct message.
So this brings us to the end of an amazing conversation. Dr. Daniela, Ali, thank you for sharing your wisdom, and thank you for sharing your tools and strategies. And Ali, thank you so much for sharing your personal journey.
It's okay, it takes time. I know everything will be alright. The colors will